Today on Dirt Nation Off-Road, it's an end of an era. We are tearing off the wrap on our Toyota Tacoma. And as we tear off this wrap, I'm gonna be going over an ownership review of this truck. Stay tuned. Hey, what's up guys? Welcome back to another episode of Dirt Nation Off-Road. So today we're bringing you an updated ownership review of our 2017 Toyota Tacoma. Now we've had this truck a long time, right? We got it since it was brand new back in 2017, and we've been using it, abusing it, daily driving it, all of that stuff. We've previously done a couple, ownership reviews. I think I did one at 50,000 miles, one at 100,000 miles. I did some stuff at 120,000 miles. You guys get the point. In today's video, I don't have anything scripted. I'm gonna literally just go off the chain and give you guys some honest feedback on this truck. Because to be honest, I'm not a huge Tacoma fanboy. I'm not a Toyota fanboy. Granted, I do own two Toyotas, and there's a reason I own Toyotas, because we'll get into that, right? There's a reason people own Toyotas. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But my goal with this video today is to give you guys an off-script, honest review on the third gen Tacoma. Now this Tacoma, it's different than others. This one's been used, it's been abused, and honestly, it's been taken care of in a lot of ways. Some ways it hasn't really been taken care of, and we're gonna talk a little bit about that in this video. But in the meantime, as we do our ownership review, we're also gonna be tearing off the wrap on the Tacoma. Now this wrap's been on the truck since King of the Hammers 2021. It's getting all old and crusty and cracked. It's time for it to come off. It's time to move on to a next chapter. So I'm gonna get set up. We're gonna start tearing off the wrap. And as we do some, wrap tearing ASMR, we'll talk about the Tacoma, and I'll give you guys some thoughts, some experiences, some stories, whatever it might be, right? Like I said, this is, I'm not scripting this video. I'm literally turning on the camera and we're talking. So let's get to it. So first things first, I don't know why I would start with the hood. The hood is the absolute worst part because it's all cracked, and you can see it doesn't want to come off as one piece, although hey, we're getting a little lucky there. Now, first thing I'll mention is, I am a little biased, right? Because I absolutely love this truck. This is the first truck that I ever purchased and, bought and actually paid off, right? First vehicle that I took a loan out and paid it off by myself. This truck is paid off. I've had it for 6 years now. And when I paid it off earlier this year, it was the most amazing feeling in the world. This truck has been a staple of my life for the past 6 years. We all go through changes. We all go through hardships. This truck's been through a lot of that with me. So between this truck and my 88 pickup Winchers, I don't think there's anything that could beat that. I've laughed in this truck. I've cried in this truck. I've had some of my best and worst moments sitting in this seat right here. So with all that, I love this truck, and it's been amazing to me. And because of that, regardless of what happens, I have good feelings towards this truck. And to be honest, I will keep it forever. I will forever have this truck. If I wreck it, I'll figure out a way to keep it and do something with it, or it'll just be a landmark someday. Now, besides all that, I do want to give you guys an honest perspective on this, or as honest as I can possibly be, right? Because this truck is not perfect. Toyotas are not perfect. Third gen Tacomas specifically are definitely not perfect. Now, we have the fourth gen Tacoma coming up. Something that I've thought about quite a bit, which I really appreciate about this third gen Tacoma, is that it really is one of the last truckish trucks. I'd say with the exception of the Jeep Wrangler, the third gen Tacoma is probably the last of a dying breed of simple vehicles that you can service yourself, you can work on yourself, just due to the increasing amount of electronics and sensors and things that go into vehicles, right? This truck, if you look at the motor, if you look at the engine, it's designed very similarly to how it was 10, 20, 30 years ago, to where when this motor gets higher in mileage, and there's some stuff I already got to work on, but when I have to start working on this truck and start breaking the motor down and maybe doing a timing chain or, God forbid, a head gasket or something like that, this is the type of vehicle to where you can service it. You can actually do those services. The suspension, people don't like leaf sprung suspension, but the reality is, like, leaf sprung suspension exists for a reason, right? It's reliable, it's easy to work on, it's cheap to upgrade, and it just works, right? It's not perfect, Obviously, there's newer stuff out there, you know, coil sprung suspension, coilovers, all that stuff. Leaf springs work. And the fact that this has a live rear axle with leaf springs, I consider it a benefit because it's still an old school design, something tried and true. There's a lot of different ways to upgrade it. There's a lot of different ways to, you know, there's a lot of stuff out there for it. Same with the IFS suspension, you know, the brakes, the steering, you know, all this other stuff, it's still mechanical. The more that they bring electronics into this and you bring those types of things, the more you're gonna have problems. And this truck is light on electronics. The electronics that it does have, it already has problems. You know, the ABS and shit, what else? You know, the newer Tacomas with the front sensors for like crash test or whatever the hell you call it. That stuff has issues. You know, we have issues with stability control and all this other stuff. It all sucks. We don't like seeing that. So I'll just say that I appreciate that this truck is of a dying breed of vehicles, that I can rely on the fact that most of this truck is mechanical. And if I need to fix it, I can pretty much do it myself, or I can find somebody that can do it. Now, the other thing I'll mention is the third gen Tacoma is one of those vehicles that has a ton of versatility, right? You can make this into pretty much whatever you want. You want it to be a rock crawler, you can make it into a decent rock crawler. I don't think you can make it into a great rock crawler unless you really throw money at it. But you can make it into a decent rock crawler. You can make this into a pretty good overland vehicle. You can make this into a pretty good pre-running vehicle. Granted, yes, you're gonna have to throw money in each direction in order to do that, but this vehicle has a ton of versatility and a ton of aftermarket support to where whatever you want to do with this vehicle, you can do. Now, something I'll say to keep in mind is if you try to do all of them, you end up with a jack of all trades, master of none situation, which I think is what this Tacoma is right now, because I've kind of done a little bit of everything, right? I throw on the RTT once in a while, plus, you know, some extra storage stuff so that I can have the overlandy aspect of it. Sometimes I take all that off and, you know, I did the 63 swap in the rear and I did the long travel up front in order to, you know, do more of the pre-running type stuff. And I've done like the high clearance bumpers, you know, front and rear, the winch, the you know, the slider steps and all that stuff in order to make this into a suitable rock crawler. Sometimes I do all three, sometimes I just focus on one. I don't think this truck does great at any one of them, but it can do all of them kind of just fine. And that's what I've always liked about this truck, is it's kind of whatever I need it to be. And I've built it into that. Especially since I really got my rock crawler going, this vehicle works well as just, hey, whatever I need it to be, it can be that. If I need it to rock crawl, it will rock crawl. Granted, I'll probably break it. And, you know, I think something that a lot of third gen and even second gen guys get caught up with doing is beating their chest about being good rock crawlers and all that stuff. Once you really get into a good rock crawler, and I mean, you know, my 88 pickup, Winchers, I mean, it's a leaf sprung Toyota on 40s. I got a 14 bolt rear axle and, you know, I've done a few things to it. It's a good rock crawler. It's not a great rock crawler. But even driving that, I've learned that when it comes to rock crawling, these IFS trucks are just limited. And that is a reality that has to set in for a lot of people, right? A lot of third gen owners, they're gonna go out, they're gonna do some crawling trails, they're gonna struggle to get through it. And at the end of the day, they're gonna celebrate and they're gonna have a good time because, you know, reality is, like, it's when you do something like that, when you do a rock crawling trail, if you do Calico with this truck or you go out to take it out to Cougar Buttes or something like that, it's a feat, it's an accomplishment, and it's something to celebrate. But you really could do so much more. And I've learned that by, you know, driving the other Toyota and driving my Nissan and really getting on those crazy rock crawling trails to where you learn the difference between an IFS vehicle and a straight axle vehicle. Now, I know some of you guys can be like, well, you can build IFS, you know, the King of the Hammers trucks and Ultra 4 and all that stuff. I know. I'm talking about a regular ass rig, right? Something you get in and drive, you drive it to the trail. It's not a fucking trailered vehicle. It's not a 100 grand build. I'm talking about regular vehicles. My point is, these trucks can do anything. And I think that's one of the special things about the third gen Tacoma is you really can do whatever you want with this truck. With all that in mind, I find that to be just a great thing about this truck and something, you know, one of the reasons why I continue to have it around and why I picked this truck in the first place. When I was first looking at vehicles, I was looking at a Jeep Wrangler. I was looking at a Jeep Cherokee, one of the new ones, like a 2018. And I'm really glad I went with this because on, you know, for all the reasons that I just mentioned, right? Rock crawling, or, you know, all the different types of off-roading, the versatility. In addition, like, this thing's pretty good for a family. You know, people fit in it. You have trucks, you know, having a truck is the ultimate thing, right? Being able to throw shit in the bed, haul shit, tow stuff. It's really nice to have. And this truck can tow, it can haul, it can do all that stuff. Granted, it won't be happy doing it, but it can do it. You can have your family in here. You can have a family of 4, you know, whether it's you and your wife or your girlfriend or whatever, have a couple kids, single dad, whatever it might be, right? Single mom. This vehicle works for that. Now, lucky / unlucky, the paint does not look good underneath this, so I'm not as worried about like the paint. I mean, of course I want the paint to stay as nice as I can, but I had my chance to keep this nice and I didn't. Now let's talk about, let me see, where do we want to start, guys? What section do we want to start on? You want to talk about daily driving? You want to talk about maintenance, upgrades? Shit. Start with daily driving. We'll talk about this truck as a daily driver first. Is this truck a good daily driver? Yes and no. Why, you might ask? Well, this truck is a good daily driver in the fact that it'll perform all the normal operations that a vehicle, you know, that a daily driver, you know, that you could want, right? It's going to turn on every morning. You're not going to have to worry about this thing randomly breaking. These trucks are reliable, okay? It's kind of a meme at this point that Toyota trucks are reliable. It's just the truth. This truck is reliable. For years, as I've beaten up this truck and done all that stuff, I've always been able to depend on the fact that if I turn on this truck, I'll be able to drive to work. I'll be able to get where I need to go. I think there's only been a few times where I've really had to sit this truck down and be like, okay, you got to rest. I got to fix some things before, you know, before we drive you. And most of the time, that's due to my own issues of beating up the truck and, you know, breaking it and all that stuff. But otherwise, this thing runs and drives just fine. I depend on this truck to get me around. Now, continuing with it as a daily driver, I will say the gas mileage on this truck is horrible. Yes, the truck's lifted, the truck is tuned, the truck is geared, the truck is all of those things, right? And that's gonna affect gas mileage in one way or another. If you're buying a vehicle and you're looking for something with good gas mileage, this is definitely not the one for good gas mileage. And at this point, with how much driving I do for my job, this is probably my biggest complaint of the vehicle is the gas mileage. But the way I have it set up, I kind of have to, you know, you sleep in the bed you make, right? I made the bed, I bought this truck, I built it, and I have to use it as it is. And this is kind of how it goes. Now, also as a daily driver, this thing really hasn't needed much maintenance. Now, I do keep up on the regular maintenance. You know, oil changes, I do them religiously every 5,000 miles, using the correct oil. I always use Mobil 1. I always use Mobil 1 filters. You know, I change the freaking air filter and the cabin filter consistently. I've done the transmission service twice now at 50,000 miles. You know, all the like regular maintenance items I am staying on top of. The only one is really the spark plugs. I do got to change the spark plugs, but besides the point. Every other maintenance item, I stay on top of it, make sure to handle my business. Most of the time, if something isn't working on this truck, it's usually related to something breaking off-road or me, you know, me just being dumb and doing something. So for example, I'm trying to think if I've ever had an issue with this truck not running or not starting. I don't think so. The only time I could think of where this truck really missed significant time is probably after Swamp Lake, which was, I think, the last time that I really did some serious rock crawling with this truck. I've done other crawling trails, I do other obstacles since, but that was like the last like really rock crawling trail I did, and that was about a year ago. And that put the truck down for about a month. I broke both front axles, I broke the steering rack, and it kind of sucked. Now what I'll say about that is, even though I broke all that stuff, I also had a dead battery. So I broke the battery, you know, the battery took a shit. I broke the steering rack, both front axles. Regardless, The next day, we did do a little bit of wheeling. I was able to wheel it up to the top of the Bald Mountain summit so I can get a picture with the truck at the lookout. In addition, I also drove the truck home from that. So I drove the truck home with a bad steering rack, no power steering in the vehicle, and it didn't destroy the freaking the power steering pump. Everything's fine. As far as I know, it's all good. And honestly, I find that to be very impressive. The fact that I was able to drive this vehicle home, I didn't have to tow it when having an issue like that. Regardless of how much I beat up this truck, you know, I break axles, I break other things, this vehicle just goes. If I need it to go to work, I can take it to work. I usually don't have to worry about that. This thing is a reliable daily driver. The AC's always worked. You know, all the little things, they all mostly work. I'm trying to think what doesn't work inside. One of the airbag sensors is on. I have a couple other ones, but in terms of like, I think the Qi charger or the Qi charger, the wireless charger, I think that did take a shit. But I think that might have been more of me meddling with the center console rather than it breaking on its own. But not much is really like broken on this truck just from normal use. Most of the time it's me abusing it and putting this truck in a position to where it's just like, yeah, dude, I can't hang with this shit anymore. So daily driving, if I were to put a grade on it, I'd give this thing an A, honestly. I'd give this thing an A, maybe an A minus, B plus maybe at the lowest. Only issue being the gas mileage. So if you're looking for a gas saver, this thing is not a gas saver. Most trucks, Jeeps, off-road vehicles are not going to be gas savers, but you can get newer ones, right? The ones with newer technology, they're going to get better gas mileage, right? New Ford Ranger, you know, you can get fucking the 4xe Jeeps, you can get hybrids, you can get a bunch of shit like that, and they're going to get better gas mileage than this. But as I've mentioned before, I really like that this thing has more old school tech, and with old school tech comes old school problems, right? This thing has very terrible gas mileage because it's kind of an older designed motor. Overall, I don't know if we wrapped up, but daily driver, Toyota Tacoma, it's a good daily driver. Has its drawbacks, just like any vehicle, but I like her. And this will be my daily driver for the foreseeable future. If you look real closely, you can see where the old wrap used to be, right there. Scratches, clean. So that's where it used to be wrapped. All right, continuing, what are we talking about? Tacomas. Off-road performance. Well, as I already mentioned, these things are versatile as hell. You can do a lot with them. You know, mine has turned into a jack of all trades type truck. You know, I can do a little bit of rock crawling, I can do a little bit of pre-running, I can do some overlanding. If I just want to scout a trail, hit something. You know, this is the type of vehicle that I can kind of take most places, but not everywhere. As much as they are reliable, they are also fragile. And that might be a controversial point, but I'm going to stick to it. These things are fragile. The IFS is super fragile. You take these things rock crawling, you're gonna break the tie rods, you're gonna break the axles, you're gonna break the steering rack, ball joints, all of that stuff is up for grabs. Yes, you can build them stronger. Yes, you can upgrade them. It's gonna take some significant money. It's gonna take some change. I mean, I've upgraded mine, but I still have to do more. You know, for example, you know, long travel kit, all that stuff. I still have stock axles. I'm working on getting my tie rods, but you know, upgraded steering, upgraded freaking RCV axles, or whatever axles you're gonna run. You're talking about some significant change. You're talking about tens of thousands of dollars to make this thing still not as good as a straight axle vehicle. Still good, much better, but not as good. So keep that in mind. Keep in mind that you have to pick what you're gonna do with this thing, or you can just kind of do what every Tacoma owner does. And you know, for you new Tacoma owners out there, if you're watching this video like, wow, this truck's cool, I've done a lot of the stuff that normal Tacoma owners do. I've done more non-traditional things too, or things maybe above and beyond what a normal Tacoma owner would do. So for example, you know, most Tacoma owners are gonna get a set of coilovers. They might do mid-travel, they might do long travel, but they're gonna do King, they're gonna do Fox, they're gonna do Icon, all normal stuff. I have a long travel kit. I have, you know, the Wicked Creations 3.5-inch kit with some Kings. I fucking love it. Absolutely love long travel on this truck. It makes it so much better to drive, so much better on the trails, even not just on like regular off-road, you know, fire trails. It is so much better to ride and drive. Other things that you're gonna see from other Tacoma owners, right? They're gonna do the cab mount chop. They're gonna do, you know, double shears, spindle gussets. All of that stuff is things you want to do to a Tacoma. My truck has all of that. As for like rear suspension, you know, it's very typical to do like a shackle, either a shackle upgrade because the hangers like to break and bend. You know, mine were bent and broken for a long time. I ended up just changing to a 63 leaf spring swap, which did a shackle flip to where now the hanger kind of, you know, goes down, and then I just have a completely different leaf spring in the rear. That's a little bit above and beyond what most Tacomas are gonna do. But for most of you out there, you're gonna wanna upgrade your leaf springs. You're gonna wanna go with something probably a little bit more flexy. You're gonna wanna go, you know, you can do an add-a-leaf, you can do a whole kit, you can do some devers, you can do, if you're more of a pre-runner, you can do some spring under, you know, something to where it's gonna have a little bit more droop. It's all good options for this truck. I really like the 63 leaf spring swap because it is super flexy. Now it does make the truck stink bug quite a bit to where the front is gonna sag down a little bit more than the rear. The 63 swap makes the rear really tall. It's just par for the course. It's kind of what you have to deal with, but it does make the truck really flexy in the rear. And it gives just like a set of solid leaf springs and leaf springs that you can pretty much replace at any time. You can find 63-inch leaf springs for $100 all day long. Super easy to find these leaf springs. They're cheap, easy to work on, and they're flexy. Flexy, nice ride. It's just all around a very, very good option for almost any truck. If you're leaf sprung, throw some 63s in your vehicle. You're gonna love it. But moving on, like some other, you know, typical Tacoma things, right? You're gonna wanna fit some 35s, so you might have to do a little bit of chopping in the front. You might have to do a cab mount chop or a cab mount relocation. I have that as well. Anyways, my point is with all this, you can build a Tacoma with the most basic build, right? The build that you see every influencer do, every vehicle out there, right? Coilovers, cab mount chop, 35s, front and rear bumper, some you know, some sliders, front locker, re-geared to 488 or 529, and you can do 70% of the trails out there. As long as you're willing to learn the vehicle a little bit, carry some extra parts, and kind of learn how to wrench on it and do all that stuff, because it will break, right? These trucks are pretty fragile, as I've said before. They're gonna break, things are gonna happen. It's in your best interest to just know how to work on them and kind of understand what the weak points are. Carry the parts you need, and then go from there. But you can build these to do, you know, another 10%, maybe 15%, to where you're gonna be running 85 to 90% of the trails out there. You can do that with this truck. It just really depends on how you wanna build it and how far you wanna go with it and how much money you wanna spend. But overall, in terms of an off-roader, this truck is great. It's actually pretty damn good. But understand that there's gonna be limitations. There's gonna be some days, some groups, some, you know, trails where you're gonna be the weak point, you're gonna get made fun of, you're gonna be the one that's kind of holding everybody up. Or there might be those days, which has happened plenty of times with my truck and plenty of times with other Tacomas out there, where you're gonna surprise somebody, where you're gonna shut some people up, you're gonna hurt some feelings, because that's what the beauty of an IFS truck, you know, Toyota Tacomas are. People see the fact that, you know, because of the negatives that you see of Tacomas, you see a lot of them, they do break out there. So people automatically assume that if you're a Tacoma driver, you know, you might be a noob or you don't know what the hell you're doing or whatever it might be. And then you could surprise them. So that's kind of the beauty of wheeling a 3rd gen IFS Tacoma. Now, a video that I've always wanted to make that I haven't had a chance to make yet, but I will make. If I could choose between this or winchers and a trailer, so winchers being my 88 Toyota pickup crawler, to be honest, based off the things that so let's say if I was just doing Dirtnation things, right? If it was just Dirtnation, I'm hosting groups, you know, I'm leading other people and all the things that come with that, I would pick the Tacoma and I would build it up as best as I can. I would build it into the best probably rock crawler that I could, and then the rest of the trails, it'll be able to do it as I need to. If it were just me, and let's say I just had a little old YouTube channel where I just record rock crawling and I don't really care about the community and teaching people and taking other people out on other trails and all of that, then I would pick winchers, because being able to just go out, rock crawl, you know, yeah, you can record and get some footage and you can go have a good time with your friends. Like, that's ultimately what I enjoy deep down. But for me, this is about purpose, right? This is about building the community. This is about teaching people. This is about building positive culture, which is why we have the Tacoma and why we have winchers, right? So we can do both. So I can do a little bit of everything, right? This truck allows me to kind of do it all. This wrap sucks. It doesn't. Actually, this wrap's very good. Shout out to Illustrious Auto Styling. The homie Misa is the one that wrapped this truck many, many moons ago. He actually lives out in Texas now. He flew out here to wrap this truck just for King of the Hammers. And if we decide to wrap this truck or another truck in the future, you bet your ass I will be going to him for that. Although I don't know if I'm going to wrap this truck again. You guys comment below. Should I wrap the Tacoma one last time or just keep wrapping it? Or do I wrap, you know, do we look at a 4th gen Tacoma or maybe something else and make that the new Dirtnation vehicle, right? Because that's what's kind of the beauty of this truck, is it's always been the Dirtnation truck. Granted, it's still the Dirtnation truck and it'll always be the Dirtnation truck. I'm kind of eliminating the branding right now to where, hey, you know, some people are going to come to the channel and they're not going to understand how important this truck is. They're not going to understand how fucking cool this thing is and all the things we've been through, and, you know, they're not going to understand, which is all right. You know, there's new things for them to know. There's new builds, there's new vehicles and all that stuff. It sounds like I'm getting rid of the Tacoma. I'm not. I don't know why I'm making it all sad and shit. As for the future of this truck, I think I'm going to keep leaning into the fast boy pre-runner type stuff. Continue making this truck a little bit better. You know, maybe, so we have the 63s in the rear. So I either continue making the 63s a little better with some better shocks, do some bump stops, maybe some straps, do some stuff to where it'll still flex good, it'll ride good, but it won't, you know, it'll just be better all around. So either do something like that, or we could do a 3-link on it, which is certainly a possibility. For the front, I already have a bypass hoop that I'm going to throw in there, so we're going to put on a bypass hoop, and from there, oh, bye-bye names. You know, we're going to throw in a bypass hoop. We're going to do all that, which is going to be really cool, right? The front will ride a lot better and all that. And, you know, we'll continue beefing up the front end a little. You know, we're going to get our new tie rods pretty soon, hopefully. Maybe upgrade the steering rack. Probably box the frame. It really needs... Oh, that's one of the things about these Tacomas is the frame. So I have bent my frame, and I have also cracked my frame in multiple spots. So keep that in mind. You abuse these trucks. They have a C-channel frame, right? Because Toyota years ago had the lawsuits and the recalls for the frame for the 1st gen Tacomas and 4Runners and whatever the hell it was. Frames used to rust out. Now we're not having issues with, you know, frames rusting over and all that stuff, but what we're having issues with is the frames themselves just being too weak because they're a C channel. So you start bending them, you start breaking them, you start cracking them. And I've definitely done that on this truck. You know, which sucks, but that's fine. We could take it somewhere and get that fixed in time. You know, the cracks, I've done what I can to weld them and gusset them here and there. And we'll just have to keep an eye on it, make sure that all stays solid. But you abuse these trucks, you should, you know, gusset the frame, box it, and do all that. Especially, I know some of the 3-link kits make you do that. If you straight axle the front, they have kits to where you can box the front and, you know, really reinforce that frame. I might have to do the same for the long travel and kind of see if I could just find like a boxing kit to where I can do that. A lot of people have asked me why not just straight axle the truck. Maybe in time, maybe. As of right now, where I stand with it is, first of all, I have 2 straight axle trucks, which I beat the living shit out of. If I were to straight axle this truck, I could go down that road. It would be fun. I don't know if it would be that exciting anymore because there are straight axle Tacomas out there. You know, people have done it. It's not exactly big news if you straight axle your Tacoma anymore, especially a 3rd gen. So, you know, if I were to do it for like the wow factor of the channel, cool, but also, I don't know. The other thing with it to keep in mind, these 3rd gen motors do not like to be sideways. And all you Tacoma owners out there, heed this warning. These motors really don't like to be sideways. You can do a couple things. Now the issue with them is the fact that oil will start to flow into the manifold. It'll get into the cylinders and then they'll start knocking. They'll throw a rod, they'll do all that shit. You will blow these motors. I've seen it happen on guys that crawl their trucks. You get them sideways. I've had it happen a couple times to where I've gotten this truck on a big incline, I've gotten it sideways, and I've got it to start smoking and kind of have like a lifter tick, kind of like the valves or whatever are getting dried out, almost blowing the motor. So I'm honestly surprised I haven't blown my motor yet, but I've seen guys do the same and they blow their motors. So that's part of the reason why I don't really want to straight axle this truck, is because I know I'm just going to blow the motor. Because once I have a straight axle version of one of these, all bets are off, right? You just fucking go nuts. Might as well, right? Why would you do anything else? If you have a straight axle Tacoma, I'm gonna do straight axle Tacoma things. So because of that, I think that's why I'm gonna start to lean a little bit more into the pre-running side of it, you know, keep it a good, solid driver, you know, build up the long travel. I can still rock crawl it when I want to. I can still do all that, but I don't have to worry so much about, oh, am I gonna long travel this truck, or am I gonna straight axle this truck? Am I gonna freaking do some crazy crawling with it? Look, I have trucks for that, and the trucks that I have for that, they're always gonna do better at it. That's just the reality of it. They're always gonna be better at it. I don't think there's a situation where this thing crawls better than my 88 pickup winchers. I don't think it's gonna happen. It could happen, but I don't think that's gonna happen anytime soon, unless I really, really put a focus on making this into a crawler. I'd love for this thing to have a crawler. Sure, I could maybe engine swap it with something that's a little more friendly for tons and doing all that. But once again, it's just like time and money, right? Time and money is the issue. But for now, we're gonna keep abusing this truck as we do. This is gonna, you know, most of the time this leads like the Patreon runs, and this leads the scouting runs, and this leads the regular runs, right? This is how we build the community, and this truck does its part in doing all that. Winchers, we go out, we do new trails, we do the crazy shit. We go to Johnson Valley and fuck it up. We do all that stuff. But this truck is the rock. This truck does all the little things and keeps the lights on, keeps everything going. And that's what I'll always appreciate about this truck. All right, here we are a couple hours later. You can see it's mostly unwrapped. This was like the worst Christmas unwrapping ever. The wrap was pretty baked on there. A lot of it was cracked, so as you're tearing it off, it's coming off in little pieces, so you're just sitting there ripping away at it, you know, using a heat gun when you can. The doors and stuff, they mostly came off in one piece. hell. Right here, back fender was hell. This I haven't done yet. It's gonna be hell, and I know the roof is gonna be terrible. So we're gonna take care of that another day because it's already getting late and I've wasted way too much time on this so far. In closing, let's talk about the Toyota Tacoma. Is it the best truck of all time? No. Is it the best mid-sized truck right now? I would say so. I would argue so. And here's why. I don't think there's a vehicle out there, Jeeps, Tacomas, maybe the Jeep Gladiator, but stay with me here, right? The Gladiator hasn't been out as long as this, right? I've had this for 6 years now. I don't think there is another vehicle out there that could go through the things that I've put this Tacoma through. And that's everything, right? That's the daily driving, that's the beatings, that's the crazy amount of trails and miles, and also the towing, the freaking hauling, the other stuff that I've done with this truck. Like, I've really put this truck to the test. And I emphasize the towing because this vehicle, you know, a lot of mid-sized vehicles, they can tow a little bit, but they're not really meant for towing. This one is kind of the same, but this is kind of is on the higher end of mid-sized pickups when it comes to towing. I towed my pickup, my rock crawler, to the Rubicon with this truck. That's amazing. Even back in 2020, I remember we did a trip out to Arizona. I towed a Jeep out to Arizona, dropped off the trailer, beat this truck up for the day, and then put that truck back on the trailer, or put the Jeep back on the trailer and towed it home with this same truck. So that's 2 trips worth of towing plus a whole day of rock crawling, all in a single day, and this truck handled it just fine. So that's why I say, when I look at the entire picture and the things that I've done to this truck, the abuse, the things it's gone through, the things that it's had to survive, I don't know if there's another vehicle out there that could do it. So in closing, I will say Toyota Tacoma, the 3rd gen Tacoma specifically, is definitely a great truck. It's not without its problems. It certainly has a lot of issues. It has some fragile and weak points that you have to shore up when you use it. But this is a great truck, and I am proud to have one. I am proud to own one, and I look forward to continuing to upgrade and do the things that we're gonna do with this truck. As for the future, we'll have to see. Right, I'm gonna paint it all one color. We might wrap it again. We might do some things. Comment below if you guys wanna see us do something specific with the truck. But that's gonna be it for this video. Hope you guys enjoyed me rambling about 3rd gen Tacomas and tearing off the wrap and having trouble and doing all the fun things that we did today. That's it for this one. Thank you guys. We'll see you again next time.